Hey y'all, today I want to go over with you the fall of Troy. This is more like a prequel to what we'll be reading, the Odyssey. It's important to know this because we need to know the reason behind Odysseus's adventures. So before we start, let's talk about Greek mythology. You're probably familiar with this from watching or reading the Percy Jackson movies and novels, or maybe you just remember it from middle school. But first, we have our head god, the god of the sky, the god of thunder, that's Zeus, and his brothers Poseidon, god of sea, and Hades, god of the underworld. This is not to be confused with what Christians know as Satan. It's important to realize that this was their religion in ancient Greece. This was before Christianity spread throughout the world. So this is what was their faith. This is what they believed in. We'll go over the rest of the gods as we read. But let's move forward. So it all started on Mount Olympus. This was where the gods lived, and there was to be a wedding. So this wedding on Mount Olympus, all the gods and goddesses were invited, except for one, Eris, the goddess of chaos. Now, if you were having a wedding, why would you not want the goddess of chaos to be there? Obviously, because everywhere she goes, chaos and destruction follows. Well, this did not sit well with Eris. She was very angry, as most would be if every one of your friends were going to a party, but you were exclusively not invited. So she plotted a little scheme to get back at them. On Mount Olympus, there was a tree to have had golden apples. She took a golden apple and had it inscribed for the fairest. Now, what does that mean, fairest? If you remember anything from like Snow White, who's the fairest of them all, that means the most beautiful, right? So Eris went to the party anyway. She hid. She wasn't seen. And during the reception, we have our three goddesses here, Athena, Hera, and Aphrodite, who were standing around as you would, kind of chit-chatting with one another, when Eris took that apple and rolled it along the floor, where it would land right in between these three goddesses. Well, of course, they started arguing between one another on who this apple was meant for, which one of them was the fairest. These goddesses got Zeus to decide. They said, Zeus, you must decide who of us is the most beautiful. Well, he, like any wise man, did not want to get into that argument with them. So he made a probably not so wise decision to ask a mortal to make this decision. The mortal that he chose was Paris, Prince of Troy. Paris couldn't decide, obviously. They are all very beautiful goddesses. So they offered him things. They started to bribe him. And Athena offers him wisdom. She told him that if he picked her, she would make him the most wise man on earth, that kings would come across the world to find him, to seek his wisdom. Hera offers him marriage to the richest king's daughter. The richest man in the world, she would be married to his daughter. And Aphrodite offers him the love of the most beautiful woman on earth. Yes, I took this picture of Paris from the movie Troy that many of you may have watched. And Paris was a good-looking young man, probably around the age of 18. And like most young men, he made the least wise decision. He didn't think he needed wisdom. As most 18-year-olds do, they think they know everything. Why would you need to know more? And he was already a prince, so he didn't feel the need to be married to the richest queen or princess in the entire world. So he did indeed choose Aphrodite. And she did grant him what she had promised, the love of the most beautiful woman on earth. And that was Helen. What she didn't tell our dear Paris here was that she was married to this guy over here, King Menelaus of Sparta. And yes, that caused a lot of trouble. That caused an entire war, a war that lasted 10 years, all because a goddess was not invited to a wedding. So the war started between Sparta and Troy. And Menelaus calls his brother Agamemnon and gets the Greeks. And he calls Odysseus, who is a king of his own country, and gets all of his allies in to help him take on Troy. What does this have to do with the Odyssey? Well, we have here Odysseus standing there, and again, this is a picture I've taken from the movie. But Odysseus played a major role in this story of the fall of Troy. He, again, was fighting along Agamemnon and Menelaus. But Odysseus wasn't necessarily known for his brute strength. He was known for one specific quality, and that was his wisdom, his wit, his ability to outsmart his opponents. He thought of a way to end this war that had been going on for 10 years. And unlike wars today, where many of you may have members of your family that serve overseas and are part of our troops. And if you do, you know that when they deploy and they go overseas, they come back within a year or 6 months even, maybe a little longer than a year, but they do come back and they rotate. Well, during this time, when you went to war, you did not go home until the war was over. So, most of these men were ready to go home to their wives, to their families. So Odysseus came up with a brilliant plan, the Trojan Horse. They would pretend to surrender, use a few of the ships to build this massive horse that was kind of like the mascot of Troy. It's kind of like a wildcat for Citronelle High School. So they would trick them by building this massive horse, pretending to surrender, while harboring 20 or so men inside this horse and waiting till everyone went to sleep, and the men would get out of the horse, open the doors of Troy, and slaughter everyone in their sleep.